Jason, we are seeing a lot of outrage on the streets tonight. Why weren't these officers charged?
Well, that's a difficult question. I'm not exactly sure I can answer why they weren't charged. I think that there was certainly enough evidence to charge them all with something, particularly with recklessness in the way that they engaged in this behavior. But the problem more is systemic. It's the way that this system has worked. It's the fact that in Louisville, they didn't have body cameras, so we don't know exactly what happened. It's the fact that there was a judge who signed off and gave a rubber stamp on a questionable warrant. It was a no-knock warrant. There's debate on whether they knocked when they entered the residence. But what we do know is that this was not a residence of anyone who was believed to be a drug dealer. It was there was somebody who Breonna Taylor, who had had a friendship with, who did not live there, whom they were looking for, but they had seen him come in the house months earlier, which is a questionable reason to have a search warrant or any other kind of warrant on that place. So I think that systemic issues exist here, even more as we, talk about the accountability of police. We have to talk about these systemic issues that keep us in this position as a nation where we have people all over the country hitting the streets, frustrated with the lack of accountability and the deaths of African Americans at the hands of law enforcement.
Jason, as we're seeing more protests unfold across the country tonight, a police officer was shot in Louisville. We do not know the circumstances around that particular incident, but the city's under curfew right now with people that are outraged over this verdict. We've seen the nationwide demonstrations against police brutality, but how does this country fix this issue without demonizing the police as a whole, where it's not an eye for an eye?
Well, again, we don't know the circumstances. I want to echo your point. We don't know the circumstances of that shooting. We don't necessarily want to attach it to something without having the facts. We do have the facts on Breonna Taylor's death and on George Floyd's death and on many other deaths that we've seen and shootings. And I think that if we want to move forward, we have to reform policing. And one way that you can get accountability, I've always believed, is that instead of giving money from taxpayer dollars, the way the 12 million that is going to Breonna Taylor's family is coming out of the pockets of taxpayers, it should come from police pension funds. That will cause other police to step in when they see wrongdoing. I think we need more transparency when there is a shooting and when there is an action. We do need more community policing. We need body cameras in all circumstances with sound, so we know exactly what's going on when these things happen. And if you get out in front of it and you show what happened and the police are not guilty of a crime, the response will be very different. So I think that we need to reform policing. If we do that and go through some serious reforms and police make an effort to get the confidence of the communities they serve, which in many cases it's us versus them, and that's what's coming out of the rhetoric sometimes of police executives and of unions. If we can stop that and get together as law enforcement and as the public, we can get into a better place. But until then, we're going to see this happening over and over and over again.
President Trump wants to say, Democrats want to defund the police. They want to abolish the police. There will be no one to respond to you when you have an emergency, and no one will be safe in Biden's America. How do you counter that message?
So I'm not so sure that you have to counter that message. Number one, you can't be the law enforcement or the law and order president when 40 members of your administration have been indicted. That is not law abiding. That does not signal law abiding when your predecessor, President Obama, had 0 members of his administration indicted. You're not the law and order president when you were impeached for potentially breaking laws and presidential norms. You're certainly not the law enforcement president or the law and order president, excuse me, when
Jason,
this is
these are all
happening
really
under
good
your watch.
political points, but we're talking about the American voter here right now. And there's two sets of people looking at this issue. There's one saying that these protests have been disruptive to cities, businesses have been destroyed, and they may be subscribing to the president's message. And then there are voters out there that want actual systemic change within, institutions for equality. So how do you balance that in such a divisive political climate right now?
Again, first of all, the main point that I want to make is that this is all happening under Donald Trump's America. It's not happening under Joe Biden's America. Joe Biden is not the president. Joe Biden is not the leader. Joe Biden is not the person who's tasked with uniting the American people right now. That is Donald Trump's job, and he is failing night after night, week after week, month after month. We see this over and over again. And how do we unite America? That's been a question that has been asked, at least by many, many great people, certainly greater than I am, for generations. I'm not so sure that we're ever going to completely unite America, and the president feeds off of division and off of racial dog whistles. But what we have to do is say the exact same things that you said earlier, Kim Kilmeny, and that is that you don't have to hate the police in order to want justice. And we can marry those two things together. We can reform police just like we're reforming education, just like we reform many other elements of our society and many other professions. Law enforcement can be reformed to serve everyone better, and that would benefit law enforcement. If we had these reforms, I would argue that law enforcement officers would not be in the danger they are in today. Perhaps 2 officers tonight would not have been shot if you had more transparency, if you had the right technology, if you made the right reforms. It would be better for police, and most of all, they would have the backing and support of the communities that they police, and which is fundamental and so important to police and policing in this country. You have to have the trust of the community. They don't have that right now, and the president is fanning the flames and actually making it worse for police officers all over the country.
Jason Nichols, we really appreciate you coming on to give us your analysis. And I think no matter which side of the aisle you are on, everybody can agree that something needs to change here in this country. Thanks for that.